It doesn't matter. We're good. We're low budget here. Hi, welcome to Community Homeworks Workshop this evening. We're glad you're joining us. Community Homeworks is a nonprofit organization here in Kalamazoo with a mission to empower low-income homeowners to maintain safe, sustainable, and dignified homes. We have workshops every Tuesday night, and experts come in and teach their area of expertise. It is open to anyone, so you don't have to be low income. You can be high income if you'd like. We don't care, as long as you want to learn. We just don't want people coming who don't want to learn. My name is Jason. I'm the education manager here, and so I get to help set up these things. If there's something you would like us to offer a workshop on, please let us know. You can put it in the comment section, or you can email us and let us know. Let's see, what else do we need to talk about tonight? Oh, tonight's workshop is screen repair. We're talking window screens, not the screens of your electronics. And our instructor for tonight is my good friend Julie. And Julie is an expert on screens. And you're going to be on screen and on screen. So thank you very much for being here, Julie. If you are at home and you have questions, put those in the comment section as well, and we will try to get those answered. And folks in the audience, please ask questions as well. Thank you very much. You're on, Julie.
Thank you. So yeah, my name is Julie, and I do know a little bit about screen repair. I have worked in screen and window repair for quite a while through Gale's True Value in town, and they do this kind of work, and they still do it. So what we're going to talk about tonight is repairing screens, the basics, how to actually repair the screen material. We'll also talk a little bit about the frames and the parts so that you know kind of how to tackle projects in your house. You guys do have a worksheet if you're folks here in the education center with us. And we're going to talk about each of the little bits and parts so that you guys know how to do these screen repairs on your own. Unfortunately, we have at least one person that brought their own screen, so we're going to make sure to actually fix a screen in-house tonight. So pretty much every screen has two major components. The screen that you see here, and then the spline that holds it in. The third feature that most people don't think about needing to repair as often, but is just as important, is the frame that holds the screen. So this particular screen, we've got a couple of issues going on. We have a tear in it. That's probably about half of the problems that people encounter with screens. And then we have a push out in this corner where the screen isn't torn, but it's pushed out. And if you try to push that back in, most of the time you find that like you can't get this material to sit back down, or maybe it turns out it's actually a little bit split there when you look at it carefully. Those are the kinds of primary issues you'll see with the screen. You can also have problems with the frame. This style of screen usually comes with a storm window. A lot of people with older houses have storm windows over an existing screen. These slide on a track, usually up or down, along with windows that create an additional barrier outside of a wood window. These little guys in the corner, these little tabs are what runs along the frame. And sometimes these will break off, and then your kind of whole screen will sort of tilt out, which obviously defeats the purpose. The other part of this guy that's important is down on the bottom. We have what's called a slide bolt. And the slide bolt is what allows you to bring that in and move it up and down in the frame. So it both locks it in place and locks it in place at a height, but also keeps it from falling like in or out. So for this particular screen, we've got, again, this push out and this split. The tilt keys seem to be fine, but we are missing one of our slide bolts. So we've got a missing part, and that might seem like, oh God, we got to throw it away and buy a new one. But most of these pieces are actually replaceable, and they are replaceable easily with parts you can find at your local hardware store or the internet. So if you have these, it's a good idea to keep them and try to fix them. If they get to a certain point, you start to be looking at replacing the entire storm window, and that, depending on if it's on the second floor, you might have to get out like a big ladder. You might have to get somebody in that has a big ladder. It can become more of an issue where it's relatively easy to just repair. Let's look at another style of screen. If you have newer windows, you might see this kind of screen. Again, we have a nylon screen here. We have an aluminum frame. This is a slightly different style, but both of these are aluminum frames. And rather than using the slide bolts and the tilt keys, this is held in with these pressure springs. And they still have corners, these plastic corners, and this is often where you'll see problems. Sometimes the screen frame material will get crushed, and sometimes these corners will get brittle from the sun and they will break. That is probably one of the most common things that you'll see, besides the screen itself being damaged. Somebody had posted on the internet about having a problem with like their dog running into these, and that it can push the whole thing out of the frame. It can bend the frame. It can also tear the screen. And all those issues are typically fixable. And if you have that kind of problem with a dog, there's also a heavier duty screen that you can kind of screw onto the front of this that will prevent, it's a solid aluminum mesh that you can put over this, and it will prevent a dog from pushing through that. Those are often found, both of these styles can also be found on not just storm windows, but a storm door on your house.
Where would you find one of those things to protect your screen from a dog?
So I'm sorry, I am not thinking of the technical name for them. They're usually called a screen door grill or a screen door grate. And you can find them at the big box stores. You can find them at the local hardware stores. I know that True Value has them. Ace probably does as well. I have definitely seen them at Menards. So Home Depot and Lowe's probably have them also. Oh. Same thing. Pets and kids. If you've got screens, pets and kids are your primary damagers. So yeah, and is that the Habitat Restore then? Yeah. Oh, that's a great price, because they do usually, I was going to say, cost anywhere from $25 to $45. You can get them in a variety of widths that will fit any size door, so that's really handy. And apparently you can get them for a pretty good price at the Habitat Race. No, they do require attachment. You could probably, depending on what your situation is, you could probably get by with a double stick tape. But if you're dealing with a large dog, you're going to want to do what I would usually do is manually affix it. So I would screw small holes into this frame, and then typically those come with some built-in holes. Sometimes they're lined up where you need them to be, and sometimes they're not. So sometimes you have to drill some holes in those. And then you can just use a screw to affix that. You can also use a pop rivet if that's something that you're already into. All right, so let's talk about a couple of the tools that you might encounter fixing a screen. Common one is a utility knife, and this will help you cut your screen to size once you've installed it. It sometimes can help you get out the old screen in Spline. The stuff that holds it in is, again, called the spline. And sometimes that stuff will be affected by the weather, UV, and it will really break down. And so when you try to pull it out, it'll just break and break and break and break. And you can use a utility knife like that to kind of shred it so it just falls out. The really important one is this guy. This is called a screen roller. There are two sides to it. One is concave and one is convex. And frankly, it doesn't really matter, in my experience, if you have a screen tool and you use either end, it will get the job done most of the time. If you're concerned about which end to use, I would use the rounded end, what you see as the rounded end, over the other end. The other end can kind of have kind of a sharp edge, and you might have really nicely put your screen together and then, be doing the finishing touches, and that kind of slightly sharp end there could actually split the screen. They put both ends on there because, in fancy pants land, theoretically you would use them differently, but I find that the rounded end can do all the jobs. These, I cannot account for inflation, but last time I saw these were under $5. So yes, you can get these for under $5. I've seen them at $2.99. I don't know, these days they might be $5.99, so I probably shouldn't say under $5, but close to that price. Definitely affordable for the average homeowner. And Community Homeworks has these to borrow as well. So you do not necessarily have to buy your own. You can get in touch with Community Homeworks, and they will let you check out tools for these kinds of repairs, and then you can do it without having to spend any money. There is another style of this guy called a screen mouse. That's what this is. And this can be nice if you have some physical limitations in your hands. These are supposed to be easier if, you have arthritis. It's an easier thing to grip, and the pressure lands on your palm. And again, this might be a little harder to find out there in the world, but something you can borrow from the lending program through Community Homeworks. But most of the time, these will work fine. So there's three common kinds of screen that you'll encounter. The most common is fiberglass. That is probably what most people have. It does come in a couple of colors, usually black and gray, and it's cloth-like. It's extremely durable, and you can get it in some different mesh sizes. So you can get it in an extremely fine mesh. You can also sometimes find it in a variety that will block the sun. And then the most common other variety that you might encounter and might actually be something you really want for your job is a vinyl coated version. And this is really good if you have pets or if you have the kids that constantly are putting their hands on the screen. And this vinyl coating makes it so that even if a dog or kids encounter this in a aggressive or forceful way, we call this pet screen or heavy duty screen, it will often just pull out of the frame versus the screen itself tearing. And then if you have one of these tools handy, you can usually just reseat the screen, reseat the spline, and put it back in there rather than replacing it. This is more expensive than your standard product. They typically do come in rolls. Some places also sell it by the foot. So I think that I know Gales sells it by the foot. Ace Hardware probably does too. Most places sell it in either 7 feet, which is enough to do a screen door or 2 windows, or they might also sell it in like a 21-foot roll. And that will do 3 screen doors or several windows. So those are the most common. I'm sorry, it might be a 25-foot roll. But yeah, they come in, and then a 100-foot as well. So they do come in rolls at a variety of lengths. The other style that you might have on your house and encounter is aluminum screen. This used to be the primary kind on people's houses, and it has since been replaced by the more inexpensive and somewhat more forgiving fiberglass screen. The advantage of aluminum, which also comes in a variety of colors, black, gray, and then this just plain metal. The advantage of this is it's extremely strong. The disadvantage is that it's susceptible to denting because it's metal, right? And so if it gets creased, those creases don't come out, no matter how much you might want them to. You can kind of re-smooth it, but it's never going to kind of go back to what it was. So it's definitely not the kind of thing that you would want to use on, say, a screen door where a lot of people are interacting with it, because it's going to get dented. It's not going to look very nice, even though theoretically it might hold up longer. And but it does hold up longer to the elements. So if you're putting this on your south-facing windows that are on the second floor, it's going to last a really long time, probably longer than a fiberglass product. And this is a little bit more expensive than the fiberglass product. Both will last a very long time. Any questions about fiberglass? Yeah. 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 Mm-hmm. I would go with the pet screen personally. I have cats, and they can pretty much do anything to this, and it just keeps on going. This stuff is particularly, in my opinion, not good. The metal product, the aluminum, is not good for pets and cats. It's actually woven strands of metal, so if they get in there, it pulls those little woven segments apart, and that like doesn't get undone. The fiberglass will hold up better. It will hold up for a time, but like their weight will start to tear them, but it's still less visible than the way this bends. But this coated product is designed, they literally call it pet screen. It's designed to handle that. And I did a screen porch in 2016, and I've had between 4 and 5 cats in that time, and it has not shown anywhere. So they really do hold up. Again, the biggest problem is usually like they'll get pushed out of the frame, but then they can be reseated. Anything else? Absolutely. And I do want you to know that, again, there's a price difference here. This is probably the most expensive. So regular fiberglass, then aluminum, and then the pet screen. And there are a couple levels of pet screen. Sometimes you'll see something called heavy duty screen. As long as it's vinyl coated, and you can feel that it's kind of got like a rubbery coating on it, that's going to hold up. But there's like pet screen, and then there's like super heavy duty pet screen. So there are a variety of levels of that. And again, usually you can buy it, the pet screen, in like a 7-foot roll. And you can also buy it at the foot at like some of the smaller hardware stores. So I will let you check those out and then just pass them down. And be careful on the aluminum stuff. Is also difficult to work with because it's actually sharp, and you can actually hurt yourself and get stabbed with it. So handle that carefully. Other questions about the screen materials? All right, so let's talk about spline. This stuff, again, this is what holds the screen in the channel. And the channels are typically, they're U-shaped, but it's really more of a C shape. So they have kind of a narrower entry point than where the spline actually sits. And that's what allows it to stay in there. So if the screen pops out and the spline is popped out, you might think, well, I can just press it back in. You actually have to press pretty hard to get it to go past that kind of narrowing at the beginning to reseat. And that's what this little tool does for you. When, if you're going to fix a screen, like replace the screen, I highly recommend replacing the spline too. Yeah, you can just set it over there. I don't need it back right now. Thank you. If you're going through the trouble of replacing the screen, replace the spline too, if it seems aged at all. Usually it'll be pretty obvious, but these do suffer from UV damage and just time. They can really shrink in size, which can be a problem, and they can also just break down. There are two materials that you'll commonly find spline made out of. One of them is what I think of as rubber. It's kind of a neoprene material. It's usually kind of ridged. And then the other is a foam. And I would say that the rubber, soft rubber, sometimes kind of harder rubber, is sort of the historical material. And I think foam is starting to be the more common material. I'm not sure if it is the more common material in what stores are selling, but it's a better product and it's what you should use. And you can definitely buy it at the local hardware stores. So I'm going to pass these around also. And you would think something called spline that holds window screen in would be incredibly simple. And it is a simple product, but it comes in a variety of sizes. And you can start to kind of lose your mind about like, what size should I be buying? So I would suggest that if you are doing your own project, bring your old spline in to the store and try to compare it to what you're going to be buying new so that you can get the right size. If anything, you can go a little bit big and you might have to work a little harder to get it in place, but it will work. If you go small, you may find that it slides through that little narrowing in the channel so easily that it'll pop right back out, and then your work will be undone, essentially. Before we actually redo a screen, I want to talk about one other product that you will find a variety of places, and that's a screen patch. And I don't know if you watch Shark Tank, if you're a Shark Tank fan, there's a screen product that one of their people that won Shark Tank put on the market. I can't even think of the name of it now. It's called Screen Fix or something like that. And it's a product that comes in sheets and it's screen colored, but it doesn't allow any air through it. So it's literally just a visual patch and it's going to patch the hole, but it's not going to act as screen, if that makes sense. So you would put it, say, over this square, and then you use a hair dryer, and it adheres to the surface of the screen. So it does, plug the hole, but it doesn't actually allow any air to pass through the section that you've put that on. And there are generic versions of it too. Some of them just have a sticky back, so it's like a tape. And then there are these little screen patches These are actually made of aluminum, and you would primarily use them with aluminum screen. And it's just a little piece of aluminum screen, and you stick it over, say, a punch hole or something like that, and then you bend the little tines in, and it fills the hole, and it actually works as a screen. So there is that part. You're going to see the patch, yeah. So if you're particular, you know, you're probably going to want to replace the screen. All right. I did miss talking about one other style of screen that some people may have, especially on older homes or on screen porches. So this is a aluminum screen, but if you'll notice, there is a wooden frame here, and that wooden frame is part of what's holding the screen in. Sometimes it's like just stapled, that screen is just stapled to the frame, and then this piece of wood is just hiding that. Sometimes there's actually a little spline channel under here, and you put the screen in, and the spline holds it in, and then this is just a decorative covering. But so you can definitely have wood framed screens as well. If you're going to fix one of these, this stuff is called it's called wooden spline, and the hardware stores typically have it as well. And you may have to get some new one if you're replacing a wood screen, because when you take this off, you want to try to be real careful, and sometimes it'll come off nice. Sometimes it'll break when you come off, especially, again, if it's aged or if it's had a lot of interaction with water. A screen sliding door, like the screen from a sliding door, like you've got the glass sliding door, and yep. So you can fix those yourself as well. You can also take them in to be repaired. They are a little bit more challenging because it's a much bigger piece of screen. And it's actually really nice if you have a table like this to work at. And yeah, not everybody has that. So it comes down to, you know, how much do you want to adventure into the project? Because you can definitely do it yourself. If you had brought one, I would show you all how to do it here tonight. But it's very doable. There's a lot of videos on YouTube that show you how to do it. So the nice thing about having a table is that you don't have to be kneeling on the ground, because it is kind of, you know, you're getting right up in there. And if you don't have a big table to work at, you're doing that then kind of on the ground, and so you sort of have to be kneeling, which is not very comfortable. Although, you know, a folded over piece of cardboard can be really helpful if you're doing something like that on like your garage or sidewalk floor. So, but it is doable. The 7-foot rolls of screen I was talking about, those are sold as 7 foot long because that is long enough to do a sliding screen door. So, yep, that's how much screen you need if you're going to do that. And then you need like 19 to 21 feet of spline.
If you're doing like a screened-in porch where the screen goes floor to ceiling, where do you find screen long enough to do that?
Yeah, so great question. Thank you. You would buy a bulk roll of it. And again, those rolls can come between 25, 50, 100 feet. Usually you don't find them longer than 100 feet. So this right here is from a 100-foot roll. There's probably 2/3 of it left. And so from a 100-foot roll, you should be able to do, I'm going to say most screen porches, depending on how big it is. You may even have some left over. But you can also buy, like at least at Gale's, last I knew, you can buy it by the foot there. And so say you want like 40 feet, they can sell you 40 feet. But it's important to check the price, because if you start buying that much of it per foot, it might be a better deal to buy the 100-foot roll and split it with your neighbor or something like that. But you can definitely get it. You can also get it in a variety of widths. They sell it on, it's available in most big box stores at a 36-inch width, which fits a standard door width in most windows. It also comes in 24-inch width, 30-inch width, again, 36, 48, and it does go up from there. So I have worked with like 8-foot wide screen. It's not fun, but it's definitely doable. And if you have a screen porch, it might be what you need.
Is there a difference between the material that the screen's made out of? Like, does it matter if you go side to side or up and down?
For most applications, it is not going to matter as long as you're consistent from window to window. So, say there's 3 windows on one side of the house that you want to replace the screens on. It's designed, most windows you're gonna have a long direction, right, of the screen, because it's at least gonna come in probably like a 7-foot width or 7-foot length. Most windows, you're going to be doing that kind of, okay, well, I've got to go long ways. I'm not going to go across, because otherwise I'm going to have to stack it and then I'm going to have gaps. That doesn't work. And then you're just going to want to go that same direction. And then say you've got short ones that it wouldn't matter. You still want to just keep that direction consistent. You will visually see it if you're particular. You will notice, because it does have a grain. The holes are a little, not all of them are, most of them are a little bit, they're not the same dimension, width and height. I believe the standard dimension is 16:18, because they just like had to mess with everybody so that you can't just use it in either direction. But there are some screens that are the same, but they'll all have the size on them. So if it says these are 20 by 20, well, then it probably won't matter. You wouldn't see a difference visually. But thanks for reminding me. There are different screens have different. They can be built out of different materials. So you might see something called no-seam screen if you go to the store. That is going to have smaller holes. You might see something like high visibility. That is going to have, each of these little threads is going to be made out of skinnier material. And the holes may also be smaller. And sometimes you can hardly see that there's any screen in the window at all. And, as you kind of add those features, the price will go up. So. And standard screen is certainly adequate to do most jobs. Any other questions about that? All right, let's see if I'm forgetting anything. We do have some parts here, and I just want to remind you that like these parts can be replaced. Like this one is missing one over here, and we can fix that. You can get those parts at the internet, at stores on the internet. You can also get them locally at, I know Gales True Value carries a lot of these parts. I don't know what they have right now at the Ace Hardware stores locally, but a lot of places have these kinds of parts. Again, these were called slide bolts. If you've got parts that are broken, bring in your old one with you, and they'll be able to match it up as closely as possible so that you can replace that. And so for like this one, you can see that it works on a spring, and that spring just kind of fits in underneath. I'm not sure which. Maybe that one. So, like, I've got this right here that it looks fairly similar, but it does go to this side. There's a right and a left on these. So, again, it's important to bring in your old part to get a new one. Oh, there we go. Thank you. I got it now. So again, like there's 1, there's 2, there's 3. I've got 4 and 5 in here. There's a lot of different styles of these. Every manufacturer has their style. So bring in your old parts if you want to try to find a replacement. This one, will not fit. I don't think I have one here that is actually going to fit for this job. Oh, that's the one that'll fit. They are actually all different according to manufacturer. So this one actually is a match for this, and I think this is one we just took out. But you could go get a brand new version of this. It might be plastic instead of aluminum. If that's going to bother you, plan to replace both of them. It's not a bad idea. If one of them broke, the other one might break soon. So if you can afford that, go ahead and do it. And if you've got like a spring from the old one and it's all rusted out like this, can you guys see that that's rusted out? Okay. You can buy those springs new too. Like this is a brand new spring. This little foot at the end, that's called a dog. And there's a little slot in here where that will fit into the frame. And it just creates a little stop point that spring can press up against. And I will pass this around so that you guys can have a closer look at it. But yeah, now we've got a new spring. You know, you can use some, personal judgment. If you're replacing plastic and it looks like brittle and yellow, I'm going to say if one's broken, the other one's going to break soon. And as long as you're going to the trouble of doing this, go ahead and replace both. If it's aluminum, it's going to hold up a little bit longer. So maybe if one of them's working, you can ignore it. Maybe just give it a little bit of like WD-40 lubrication or something like that. If money's tight, only replace what you absolutely have to replace. You can definitely go that route. A lot of times with these, the spring or the little dog is really the problem versus the actual slide bolt. So if that's your issue, just this part only costs 50 cents. This part might cost $3. I am going to say that it couldn't hurt, but I don't think to do that myself. But if it seems like it's squeaking, a little bit of WD-40 or silicone for sure is not going to hurt it. Although I would try to keep it off the screen material. That could be a little caustic for either the aluminum or the fiberglass. Those chemicals might tend to break it down a little bit. So you can also just use bar soap, rub it on those parts, and that will act as a lubricant as well if you're just, want to use something you have around the house and you don't have WD-40. Exactly. Use the Irish Spring if you've got it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. For sure. So yeah, if you guys want to, if folks want to come up, I can show you what we might do to fix one of these corners and what this material is going to look like when it comes out. And then we can kind of go through actually fixing one. if you'd like. You don't have to come up, but you're welcome to. All right. Oh, for sure. Bring your screen up. We'll do that next. All right. All right. So let's say that you've got a let's say that you've got a storm window screen like this, and these tilt key corners are broken, which is how my 2 apartments ago, they were all broken, and these would fall out all the time, and so I just resorted to putting duct tape on there to hold the corners, and I had no idea that you could fix these. So it was much to my surprise that then I got a job working on these and found out that these are super easy to fix, and I could have done that a long time ago all by myself. Although if you're renting, technically it should be your landlord's responsibility. And I will say that if your screens are in really bad shape, those should fail inspection, and they should tell your landlord to fix them. So, all right. So the first trick is getting the spline out. And this is a tiny screwdriver. Most people have a tiny screwdriver, maybe an eyeglass screwdriver, or something like that. Just a small screwdriver of any style will usually help you dig that out. That is probably one of the harder things to do, is to get that spline starting to come out. Yep. That's usually a good point of entry. It's usually pulled kind of thin in the corners. So that's usually where I go, but it could be somewhere else. If you've already got some pulled out, start there. Don't make more work for yourself. So this is kind of a historical, although it can still be purchased and it's still used, sort of spline. It's T-shaped, and you can check that out. If you encounter T-shaped spline, great. It's wonderful that the manufacturer used that product. You do not need to use it again. It's a pain in the butt, and I would not use it. When I first started working on these, I thought I should use it because that's what came out of it. And after fighting with it for 20 minutes, I was like, nope, not worried about that. All right, so the key is to just kind of compare it to the spline, bring it to the store, and see about which one it's closest to. So, I mean, this is kind of close, but this one looks a little smaller to me. And I don't know if you can see that there. So I always say, like, go big. So this is a bit of a bigger spline. Let's see how that one matches up. Oh, yeah. That is closer in size. And these actually have measurements. This is 0.16, and this is 0.145. Nope. 0.145. If you're working on a storm something, 0.6, 0.65, that's where you want to be. So if you know you're going home to do that project, or you're at home watching and that's the project you're going to take on, get a 0.6 or a 0.65. That is going to work 90% of the time. So the old one, I would not bother. Because, like, in this case, again, you want to sort of stick with the grain. In this case, I think this is too skinny. It is. So it's too skinny to use it in this dimension. I would need a wider one. If I had a wider one, I technically I do have a wider one. That's actually pet screen. Oh, I have two wider ones, but I don't want to use either of those. So we do have a bunch of styles here. This is actually one of those no-seam screens. And so it has really small holes. And it's very strong and heavy duty. It is more expensive again. And you do lose some of the light. It's not going to let in as much light. It's because of the no-seam insects that, but it's true. You lose some of the visuals. So working with what you have, like, it's okay if I go sideways with this. I'm just going to want to do that with every one I do, because visually I'm going to notice if I do it the other direction. But as we've established, I can't go the other direction. And, most people, realistically, most people aren't even going to care. But if you look at your house from the outside, you might be able to visually tell the difference. And that might bother some people. So that's what I'm giving you information. You don't have to worry about it if you don't think it would bother you. So this is a utility knife, super handy. You can always cut screen with a utility knife. And when I do this, I always give myself a couple inches over on all sides. And that's why I'm not worried about using the old one as a pattern. The nice thing about the old one is I could have used it to figure out how much screen I need when I go to the store. Do you have a measuring tape? I did not think to grab one of those. Because that is what you would need to do as a homeowner or renter that's trying to fix their screen. You would want to start with that. So it can be helpful to just measure the frame, because you do need it a little big. So like that frame is about 26 wide. 27 is like the minimum you would want. Well, they sell it at 30 inches. So I'd probably buy 30-inch wide screen. And then that's 21 inches. 24 is kind of the next commonly available. So you need something that's at least 24 by 30. And this will basically tell you the same thing. I've got about 24 and a half here, so I'd round up to 30. I've got 19 plus here, so yeah, I'd round up to 24. And on this, it's just garbage unless you have some random need for like a little piece of screen. You will visually notice if it's super crooked because the straight line grain on it. So I do try to keep that, relatively lined up. You're just eyeballing it. And then this is where your screen roller comes in. Again, there is a round end. I should have passed this around earlier. Do you want to pass this out to those folks? And you can all take a look at one. So you can see there are sort of two different ends on it. This is the part where you would use the rounded end. But again, I think you can use the rounded for all of the project. What I do is use my arm to hold it in place so that it doesn't move. And you're just going to seat the screen into that little channel as the first thing you do. And that's going to stretch the screen so that it's relatively flat, no bubbles. And then, so this is where like the package directions or whatever might tell you, okay, now use the the whatever, I don't remember convex and concave today for some reason. I think that's convex. They would say, okay, now use that side. Well, realistically, it doesn't really matter. The rounded end is going to make sure you don't inadvertently split your screen. This does take a little bit of pressure to do, But then you just press this spline into the channel, and I'm kind of holding the spline there to start with. And you just kind of roll along. And I do apologize. I'm making this look easier than it's going to feel for you the first time you're doing it. But you will get better. So, and then we're going to do the same on the next side. Just one side at a time. Yep. And then I'm going to show you why that's important in just a second here. If you do have that little screwdriver from before, it can be real nice to sort of push that corner in good. If you don't push your corners in good, you're going to find you redid your screen only to have that spline pop out in the corners. And then the bugs will get in. Yeah, little flathead screwdriver, big flathead screwdriver, anything like that'll work. Okay, so we've got two sides seated. And make sure that corner is really nice in there. All right, so now if I put my arm down here and do this again, and then put the screen in, and then put the spline in. Oh. I'm like, it does take a little muscle. I'm not going to lie. If you put your arm down and do that, what you're going to find is that your screen is kind of loose. So for the last two sides, what I usually do is I don't put my arm on it. I just kind of hold it in place, and then I roll the screen in, and that's pulling it taut, but not extremely tight. These frames, this aluminum, is soft enough material that you can bend it, even over a stretch like this, and then it will be U-shaped on either side, and it will let bugs in. It may not. These can be particularly hard because of those kind of loose corners. It is a good, if you're at a table, check it to see if it's square, roughly. You'll have a little bit of, space to kind of jimmy it back and forth. But if you, you can absolutely put it together in such a way that it won't go back in. If that happens, don't worry about it. Just pull out the spline and start over. All right. And then we would get to this last side, and I would do the same thing. I'm just going to move that across and let it pull the screen tight. I'm going to, again, use that little screwdriver to seat the corner. Makes it easier. And it gives you a place to start, so you don't have to do quite as much work. And you're probably not going to have it on a giant 1,000-foot roll like that. So you will probably have an end in sight. And if you would like to cut it to your approximate total length ahead of time, that makes it easier. And now what I would do is trim off the spline so that it tucks into the corner. And then I lay that utility knife at an angle against the spline, cutting toward the frame. And just trim. Looks so nice. I know. You do want to be a little bit careful. If you've got like a painted frame like this and you kind of slip with your utility knife, you can make a nice gouge in your frame that then you might need to like touch up with some marker or something. You might accidentally do it to like a $700 screen door and have somebody yell at you. I did that. It's like I work with screen doors all day, and the only one I damage is the really expensive one. And then now that we're all the way at the end, I would trim this last little bit off and tuck it in. So cut that, tuck it in. And you do want to be careful with these, especially because the way I'm recommending it, you are cutting toward yourself, which is not ideal, but you're cutting against something in front of you. But do be careful. If you're not super comfortable with that, you can use scissors and just kind of skim it along. You'll have a tiny little lip, but you're not going to see it. It's going to be facing the outside of the house. So, you know. And voila, brand new. And you can see how this has got a little wiggle? So if you made it a little too tight, or it's a little, not square, you can give it a little shake like that, and it'll loosen up a little bit, and you'll be able to get it in and out of your window. If you did it too tight, you might see that, can you guys see that this is kind of bowed? If you do it too tight, it'll bow like that. And then if you notice, if you think it might be bowed, check for that before you trim the screen. Because now that I've trimmed the screen, if I pull this spline out, I'm not going to have enough screen in here to sort of make up the difference to fix that bow. So check against something like a straight edge to see if you've got a bow first. There's a tiny little bit of a bow here, but it's not going to be enough to cause a problem. If it was a bow, kind of like that, you'd have bugs coming in and out. So, questions? All right. Do you want to come in? Let's try yours.
Julie, I think we're going to say goodbye to our online audience.
Okay.
I wanted to thank everyone for joining us tonight, especially those of us who are in the classroom here at 812 Bryant Street. We will be back next week with another workshop, and come out and see us. We'd love to see you. Thanks, and have a great evening.
Bye. All right. So, yes. Well, yeah, let's fix yours. You're going to fix it yourself, I hope. Do you want to fix it yourself?
Really? I just wanted to watch.
I mean, we can do that. We can do that. All right.